Hi everyone. Today I'm going to complete my discussions of the horror films of 1972, which I've been doing throughout the month of October. I think this is my 13th movie, uh, and um, but I still plan to do another one from 1968. I think it was Night of the Living Dead. I'm going to try to publish that on Halloween Eve to round out horror October. But today I'm going to talk about another movie. This is called Last House on the Left. And I had considerable trepidations about even talking about the movie or even revisiting the movie because one of the surprises of the other films I've been watching, horror movies I've been watching this month, because I'm not a big horror film fan, is that how much fun they were. They, even when they got a little bit explicitly gory, they still were a lot of fun. I think it's safe to say The Last House on the Left, at least the 1972 original version, is not a fun movie. I mean, it's no fun at all. But it was an important movie. I have to concede that it was an important movie because it brought into play and exposed an audience unexpectedly large audience. Last House on the Left played in a first-run movie theater. That's where I saw it, despite the fact that it had hardly any reviews, and what reviews there weren't good, except for one, and I'll get to that review soon. But it involved torture, it involved knives, guns, rape, disembowelment, chainsaws, and it depicted, most of that violence is depicted in a very explicit way. But to place it into the context of 1972, it was called torture porn, horror porn. And porn is the operative word here because 72 was also the year of Deep Throat. I think Deep Throat was one of the top 10 box office grossing movies of 1972. And porn had already been legal for a little bit, but this Deep Throat brought it into sort of a mainstream audience, and movie theater owners who were really struggling saw this as, well, there's an audience for this. let's show more hardcore pornography. And in some cities, there would be like the movie palace that went back to the 20s and 30s for that town. Suddenly started showing pornographic movies. This was the anything goes era. So. And big cities would have like 6, 12 porno theaters. So there was this new audience. And now we see a new audience for this kind of explicit violence and very gory, gross out kind of violence. Last House on the Left showed that there was an audience for that. And so movie theaters, they clamored, like, give me more of this. But when I saw it in 1972, I'll never forget when I saw this movie because I had never imagined that movie makers would do these kind of scenes. And it was a large audience. There was word of mouth on the film, and had that great "It's only a movie, it's only a movie, it's only a movie" trailer. And that was the publicity that was used very successfully. But in that large audience, I know lots of people left, and people coming out saying, "Oh my God, that was so horrible." But then there was other people, "Wow, gross. Well, it was so gross. I was so grossed out I couldn't look, but then I had to look." So this was the audience. Movie makers discovered that there was going to be enough size of an audience for this kind of gross stuff. Gross violence, they had to make more. Now, so it was an important movie for 72, an important movie for me in my own movie-going life because I never wanted to see another movie like this. And so I avoided horror movies outside of things like The Exorcist or The Shining and The Poltergeist. I saw all those films. But writer-director Wes Craven went on to great success, with Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, and the producer, Sean Cunningham, did the Friday the 13th franchise. So I never saw one of those movies or any of the like. I never did. And so I got a big blind spot. I got to admit it. And but there was one good review I came across, and that was Roger Ebert, and he gave it 3.5 stars. And I can't imagine what he saw in the movie. I mean, I read a review and he saw metaphors, but I have to hand it to him. He did recognize talent in Wes Craven, and the writer-director. So I think that review gave Wes Craven's career a big boost. Gene Siskel, Roger Ebert's Chicago colleague in film criticism, he thought it was an awful movie. I think one thing I agree with Ebert on is it was a very spirited cast, and we get the idea of it from the supplements. They evidently had lots of fun making it. They were mostly amateurs, except for one of the bad guys, who was played by Fred Lincoln. And Fred Lincoln had been in exploitation movies, including hardcore pornography. And the genesis of Last House on the Left was that it was going to be a hardcore pornography movie. But when the financiers read the screenplay, they thought it would do well enough without it. It would do better without it. The screenplay was good enough. And then they could show it in more theaters without the word hardcore pornography. So, and in the supplements we see the actors, later on, I guess the early 2000s, discussing the film, and they had moral qualms about it, and some of their family members were really outraged that they had been in such a film, and so and Fred Lincoln says that he thought the movie was a piece of crap, and when he was asked about or told that the movie was banned in so many countries around the world, including Britain, I don't think it was ever shown until the 1990s in Britain. And he said, boy, I wish it had been banned in the United States. So, and he never participated in the horror festivals that some of the other actors did in subsequent years. And then Craven, there's a whole lot of Craven in the supplements, and he was a very intellectual guy. He was very articulate, well-read, and I believe he actually taught English literature in New York State University. And he uses, to defend the movie, he uses what I call the Peckinpah defense, where Peckinpah, defending the explicit violence in the Wild Bunch, said that it was justified because he thought that audiences needed to feel a catharsis. They had to see what violence was really like, what it was actually like for people to get shot. And and with the Wild Bunch, again, it was either revulsion or it was wow, violence is cool, it's entertaining, So movies got, and Western movies got, and many other movies got more and more violent because there was an audience for it. So, and Craven uses the same defense, and they also, both of them cite Greek drama, classical Greek theater, which I don't think is correct, because the Greek theater, which was indeed bloody, never showed any violence on stage. All the violence was off stage, left to the audience's imagination. You did see the blood afterwards, to be sure. Craven also uses the same Peckinpah argument as far as the Vietnam War, that this level of violence was a reaction to their own personal revulsion to the Vietnam War and to the violence that was going on in the Vietnam War. In the sense that we were basically a sick society. Vietnam was an act of sickness, and the society was sick. The movies are going to reflect that. As Craven was a long-haired anti-war protester during this Vietnam era. And he also mentions his fundamentalist upbringing, which I thought was pretty interesting, because I shared a similar fundamentalist upbringing as a kid. And he went to Wheaton College. Several of my cousins went to Wheaton College, a Christian college outside of Chicago. And he talks about how he just, in reaction to that strict upbringing, he was going full-blown transgressive. He was just going to be exactly the opposite of what a Christian film would be. He was going to do that. And he was going to let it all hang out. And I think that's kind of interesting too, because that was so much part of the times, that there was something wrong with this straight-laced, repressed society that we had been coming out of the 50s and then gradually changed in the 60s to the late 60s. It just exploded, this kind of counterculture, and when the prohibitions on language and movies, what you could say movies, books, all went away. And in the supplements too, there both Craven and Sean Cunningham, the producer, they don't knock the movie, but they look a little bit sheepish about the effect that it had, and that maybe they went a little bit too far. And of course, Craven and Cunningham were typecast as horror film directors. They couldn't get financing for other projects. Now, Craven did make a movie in the 90s with Meryl Streep where she received an Academy Award nomination. And, so Ebert's recognition of Craven's talent, for sure, was there, and I guess Ebert's review gave a big boost to his career. Cunningham said, I don't even like horror films. And I don't know. There's some indications, there's some conversation that even young people today are a bit upset watching Last House on the Left. That, in a sense, they did cross a line. There's a certain line they crossed, and I think maybe because that Craven deliberately uses a documentary approach to the film, so that it makes it seem even more real. There's no fun element within this film. So, if you're up for it, yeah, it's an important movie to watch in the history of horror films. But if this kind of stuff that I've described bothers you, you're probably best to stay away. Thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.